Hello everybody, I'm Jason Rice. I'm an SSP veteran, a U.S. Army officer veteran, and an engineer.
Can you give me a brief summary of your life up until this point?
Brief summary of my life up to this point. Sure, I'll try. I had what I thought of as a normal life. In fact, we were talking a moment ago off air that I'd take out the garbage and wash the car and fill up the gas tank, just like everybody else. Aches and pains some days, and other days are good. When I started waking up to the memories that had been compartmentalized and buried, they were at first some just strange memories that had come back, and I figured, okay, it's just another day, and the amount of them increased enough that I was starting to piece together the events that happened. It wasn't just a scene. That occurred over a period of a couple of years, and I was able to come forward with the events and my experiences within the secret space program.
Can you kind of give us like an example of a particular mission that you would have been on?
Sure.
And a time period, a dates, if you can put dates to it, maybe.
Sure. A particular mission that I'd been on would have been 99 time frame, circa 1999. We were on Planet 1 and Area 26, and there was our mission at that time was to gather intelligence of the local populations so that we could develop a better assistance plan to help them prepare for their defense of the planet.
So is there a battle going on
There is.
in our solar system, or is it in other solar
There are a
systems?
bunch. There are a bunch of them.
And our secret space program, does the presidents, the world leaders know about it, or is it so far beyond them?
I think that there are certain leadership that knows about some of the SSP activities. However, the vast scope and breadth of the SSP means that there are extreme cases of compartmentalization, and nobody, no matter what they claim, knows about all of it. And your question about whether there's wars going on currently, the unit that I was a part of were one leg of a false flag. The same command structure was also in charge of ordering the alien invasion fleet. They were in charge of our fleet that was there to help the populations so they could speed up planetary control from a century or more to less than 10 years.
So when we say alien, what are we talking about? I mean, are we talking about the Greys? Are we talking about Palladians? What type of species, or is it just multiple kind of species?
The Draco, primarily, and their boss, the AI, are the ones that were calling the shots for the unit that I was in.
And do these guys, are they governed by any kind of religious
Spirituality. They have their own, and it's mostly centered around AI and transhumanism, if you will, in our
What would you
equivalent.
say their opinion of humans?
That we are animals, feed animals, slave animals, that they don't have a very high regard for us.
And we talk about the Alliance. Is that real? Have we got other ETs out there supporting us, or are we on our own?
No, actually, we do have some benevolent ETs that are on our side. However, what they are doing is they are doing their best to stop intrusions from other ETs. The mess that we've got on this planet, we're going to have to take care of that.
Okay. Did Adolf Hitler get involved in a secret space program? Did he know about it?
He was highly involved in Germany's secret space program.
And if he was getting assistance by ET, who was he getting the assistance through?
From the Draco.
Right.
Yeah. The Mars Germans that I had served with, I had the blessing of becoming friends with a few of them, and was able to find out information that we don't have privilege to, coming from the USA, anyway.
So would you be giving information going back to the pyramids and the ancient sites around the world? Have you got any information on that?
My information starts around the 1930 timeframe.
Where would you say we're up to now within this battle within the solar system?
Oh, sure. Great question. Where are we with this battle? Well, I can tell you that the IDARF carrier fleets still have units out on deployment. The false flag nature of that unit, again, is franchising evil, essentially, is setting up despotic control over planetary populations. And they do that through mass casualty war. And the other battles that are going on amongst ET races for either control of territory or ideological, I don't know. That's a good question.
It sounds like it's Star Wars, the movie.
Yeah.
How close to reality actually is that?
Yeah, truth stranger than fiction. You've got a rebel alliance against an empire. Yeah, the Draco Empire spreads across many solar systems.
Okay. So what kind of technology are we talking about? What do we have at our disposal as humans?
As humans, the technology that we have at our disposal include nanite enhancement therapies. Well, the next question is, what is that? Well, the enhancement therapies that they gave to us as soldiers were primarily designed to help give us the best chances at staying alive. They included anti-radiation protocols. They included, and these are micro machines, they're non-living, but that help aid in the healing process. They help with glandular control for either increasing the particular output or another one, depending on if you need to stay awake longer, or if you need to curb an appetite, or if you need to any number of things.
So I mean,
that's one area.
Yeah, I mean, what kind of distance are we actually traveling in solar system in light
Thousands of light years.
So we really are that
Thousands.
advanced.
There are humans from Earth all over this galaxy, and others.
Are there humans being born on other planets that haven't experienced Earth?
The aliens that I came in contact with appeared to be human. Just like other humanoids here on Earth, they had varied color, hair, and light and dark skin, eye colors that were ranging from blue to green to brown to hazel to anything in between. So yeah, how they got there, that's a good question.
Mankind's greatest achievement, if you like, seems to be the moon landing, and we're approaching the Apollo 11 50th anniversary this year. Was that all set up? Was it a stage? Because if we've got this technology, why are they wasting money to go to the moon? I mean, and did we even go to the moon?
That's a great question. Yeah, we did. They had sets set up in the event that they weren't able to get good footage. So that's what the sets were for. The mankind's movement into space with the Apollo program was a cover-up for hiding black budget money.
Purely a financial
campaign. And to get the public involved with, getting excited about space and political gain.
Okay. So you believe we did land on the moon, Neil Armstrong put that foot on the ground, that's all real?
Yeah. Yep. They were shadowed, they had company. Yeah.
That's the next question, did they have craft up there watching?
Oh yeah. Yep. They had company watching.
Do you think we have been back secretly since then?
Yes, we have a base there, the Lunar Command Center. The Germans put their first base there in the 40s, and we took over that base in 1991 as part of the agreement that started IDARF, the unit that I was in.
Wow.
Paying for the lease of the moon base required that Earth provide 25,000 soldiers for use where and when the IDARF command structure needed. And so that's how it came about.
What would you say people are out looking at the stars all the time, looking at UFOs. How many are actually ET and how many are our own UFOs?
That's a great question. I was talking last night with some other attendees here, and Earth has a defense grid. So the UFOs that are viewed within our skies have permission to be here. Whether they're human or they're ET, that's a great question. I would tell you that the majority of the UFOs seen are almost certainly human, and it's only a small percentage that are ET.
The ET ones that we do see, so I take it they're a part of the Alliance, or are they the enemy as well, some of them?
Well, it depends on who you ask that question. There are still a lot of dark forces at play here on Earth, and they have control over certain geographical areas. So the ETs that come in through that portal or through that door into those geographies are allowed in. Over here on the other side of the planet, they would be shot down. I mean, it's a mess. We have a mess here on the planet, and it's something that we've got to get straightened out.
Are we going to get ET disclosure? I mean, are the governments keeping it a secret with good intentions so we don't get exposed to the war that's going on? Or would you say the governments, the elites are manipulating us? What's your take on that?
Well, I think that your first question is if we're going to have ET disclosure. Yeah, we will. It's not a matter of if, it's just when. Their intentions initially, I think the time frame when this was first an issue was 1948, 1947. So the social mores, as well as the way that the command people were, Eisenhower, that was a different generation. And their thinking was, okay, this is something that the public is not ready for, and we need to keep it under wraps for now until we can get a better handle on it. Unfortunately, there were far too many nefarious groups that wanted that technology, that subverted the control of it, and were able to gain control over a period of decades.
Okay. One final question for
Sure.
you then. I mean, very brave for you to come forward with your information. Very brave not only for your own life and your protection, but this community is also a little bit hostile towards secret
Sometimes.
space program.
Sure.
It's really divided. How would you think your former colleagues within the SSP actually feel about you talking about these? How do your former commanders, let's say,
My
and the
former
government-
soldier comrades?
yeah, would
I
they
would
be
say-
annoyed with you for coming forward, or?
No. We weren't told about the memory wipe compartmentalization when we volunteered. That was not part of the deal. Among the other things, they told us we'd have a nice nest egg when we graduated or retired. That they didn't say anything about memory wipes. They never told us they were going to tell our families we were dead, so that they would assure our commitment. So those that are in that have found out those very disturbing truths, I would say that they would want. I know I would have. If I was back in at like year 15 of my 20 and somebody said, look, Major, they're gonna wipe your memory when you get back. Whoa, wait a minute. Time out.
Yeah, I mean, I have no doubt we can wipe memories. I have
Sure.
I'd be disappointed if we didn't have a secret space
Right.
program, to be honest. It's
Right.
common sense to have one of those. But can you understand why people, even in the UFO community, find it hard to believe because there isn't much proof but your word?
Sure. Yeah, I've got no tangible proof. I understand that. And I'm asking people to take my word for it. There are circumstantial proofs that I've been able to find and locate. And I think once the technology was acquired for mind wipe, that was probably on par, if not more important, to human development and technology than the Manhattan Project, because they were able to assure secrecy, that you can't tell something that you don't remember.
I mean, you said you've met ETs. Would they continue that communication with you up to this point, or have you had nothing since you left the program?
I've had no contact with them since getting out.
Are you disappointed that they haven't made contact with you to kind of give you some reassurances, or?
No, I actually have, my faith is very strong, and so needing a reassurance from an ETs, no. I am of the mind that there was help getting to the mess that we have here. They were ET races were directly involved in creating the mess that we've got. And my thoughts are, okay, thank you for keeping our environment safe, clear, and free from meddling ETs. We need to clean this up. Humans need to be involved with cleaning it up, not ET races.
Where do you see us in the next 5 years? Do you think we're heading into that kind of disclosure?
I do.
That soon?
I see it happening. The existing disclosure plan that's happening right this very minute involves slow release of technology. February of 2018, they released information on transparent metal. Came out as a patent. They're working on it. They've had that for decades. The DARPA, later last year, released a neural interface between a pilot and 3 drones. Another technology that was mature when I went in '97, well developed again. So they're releasing these technologies through universities or corporations, so we get to pay for them twice.
Yeah.
How's that feel?
Yeah, great. So is it going to be consciousness or technology that gets us to that tipping point?
I believe that consciousness is what's going to get us there. And demand from the people. I was just talking yesterday that those responsible for 80 years of secrecy are the same ones that came up with this drip disclosure plan. And I don't want them deciding that. They're the ones that kept us in the dark and lied to us for 80 years. I want the people, the citizens, the civilians, to decide what we're going to do with technology integration. And in order to do that, we have to have a number of people that come forward and say, oh, like, let's put a plan together. This is how we're going to obsolete certain job industries, like the power company grid. Well, there's thousands of workers that are now out of work if you drop new technology that allows power generation at each house. Well, what are you going to do about all those workers? Well, now let's get them into working on next generation power. Well, there's some training involved with that. Okay, well, get those people involved in determining their future. How do they want to get trained? How do they want to work? What do they want to do? Same thing for the medical industry. Same thing for transportation. Same thing for ecology. Same principles apply.
Because of my experience in things with NASA back from 1966 to 1980 and working as well, actually, as test pilot, if you want to call it that, we were civilian astronaut consultant pilots. I was with the Grumman Corporation that built the lunar module, and our job, four of us, was to test it in the vacuum chambers, just like in space, being sure it was safe to use for the NASA astronauts. And then in turn, once we had cleared that, then that's when we started with the flying the command module and lunar module, the Earth orbit, and then on over to the moon. So that was my main part. And then after that, I went to work over at the Lunar Receiving Laboratory and caught the astronauts coming back from the moon with the samples and supplies, and we became the director of the Data and Photo Control Department, which meant I had access to not only the samples, but the first analysis of the samples, all of the pictures, the film, and et cetera. So whenever they finally decided to get rid of all the extra pictures, they said, and I argued with them, I said, well, they said, go throw them away. And I said, no. I mean, we paid for them with our tax money. Well, let's give them to the universities that have a science department. And I argued with them for about 10 minutes. Finally, they said, I don't care what you do, just get rid of all but one set. That's all I needed. Get rid of them, all but one set. I did that, and I threw 3 sets in the Dempsey dumpster, which was found by a lady that saved some of them, just a few of them. And then one set I fixed up in filing cabinets, so they had a control set that was sitting there. And that 5th set, well, I had to get rid of it, so I put it in a duffel bag and I took it home and kept it. So 40 years later, whenever they started looking for people that had records and things, I came forward. Mr. Richard Hoagland discovered I had them, and then because mine are the original pictures right off of the original negatives, first generation. And when people have come to me and taken a look at it, they're flabbergasted because they can see some of the alien bases, some of the things that were on the moon that have been kept secret. What Hoagland said is because people have disappeared and died and all kinds of things that have happened because they knew stuff but they didn't come forward. He says you have one choice. Take your chances, or let's go to the Washington, D.C., to the National Press Club and present the information that you have. So we did that in 1995. And then again, we went back in 1997, and it's worked out very well. I've had debunkers trying to discredit me with the attitude that if they can show that I made a mistake or I lied or something like that, that way people wouldn't believe or look at the data. But then every time I've had the documents. That's why I started publishing my book on my history, the background, with documents to prove that what I said was true. That kind of goes back to my mother. She said, if you have something that's of value to you, why don't you hang on to it, because someday somebody else is going to want to see it. And I did.
So NASA, does it stand for never a straight answer?
You know, I kind of take credit for that. Several years ago, somebody was talking about what does NASA stand for, and it just clicked me, and I said, well, most people think it stands for the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, but I look at it, NASA. How about never a straight answer? Because unfortunately, in fact, when the director of NASA was before Congress, and he was trying to tell stories, and one of the congressmen says, you might as well give up, because everybody knows that if your lips are moving, you're lying.
What did the astronauts used to say? Did you hear any of the gossip about what they'd seen? And
several of the astronauts have come forward. I mean, everybody knows that Buzz Aldrin has pretty well come out of the closet, I like to say. And in fact, that it was one of the reporters, oh, you never went to the moon, you didn't do that, and he got fed up, turned around and just clocked him, belted him. And that was good. More and more people are coming forward now that it's been almost 50 years. And the thing is, the government promised the people of the world that as soon as we got back from the moon, we'd share information about what was on the moon and everything else, and then they clammed up and started altering that's why the pictures and the films and the transparencies, I have 70mm Hasselblad camera transparencies, are so important, because they're first generation off of the originals. And if you look at those, you can see such a difference, because we didn't have airbrushing back in the old days. They would take a print, they put a vising cover over the top, then they would paint out everything they wanted there, and then they could rephotograph. They would still have the original, but then one of the things that they said was, oh, well, we were brushing them out because people didn't want to confuse them with the stars, etc., which is not really true. They were airbrushing out. No, it didn't have airbrush. They were painting out the way of things on the surface as well as the horizon. The
artifacts on the moon, let's say, the structures, are they extraterrestrial? Are they ancient civilizations, maybe, that break away from Earth?
How about all three? And I can cover that, because if you go to the ancient Sumerian texts and things like that, Enki and whatever his name was, supposedly went to the moon and set up a base there and lived there for quite a long time. There are some evidence of some ancient ruins, and I have pictures that we've zoomed in and looked at some of the ancient ruins. I've got some fantastic pictures in my archive. Coming up close to the terminator, the edge of the moon, next step over, you're going behind the moon instead of, not behind, into the back side of the moon, or stay on the front side. And there's a series of craters there that actually shows domes illuminated from the inside base. On that one, it definitely looks like it was, you know how humans do. When we do something, we're going to line it all up nice and neat and survey it out, and we've got crisscross roads. There's over a dozen or more domes inside this one flat area on the moon, and I've got the original pictures that shows it just as clear as it can be.
What was it like the first time you saw these images? Did you just say, oh,
well,
my
the first time, the aha moment is what you want. Dr. Thornton Page, who was the director of the Lunar and Planetary Science Department for NASA at the Johnston Space Center, knew me because I was the director of the Data and Photo Control Department. He came over and says, Ken, I want to see a picture of a film on Apollo 14. He gave me the number, and he said, set it up for these other scientists that I've got with, so that they can see some of the pictures on the backside of the moon. I said, sure. So I went to the photo lab, checked out the reel, went over, I got him to get me a gun sequence camera. Now, if you've ever seen movies where planes are chasing each other, shooting, and each time there's a going on, well, the camera takes a frame shot, a picture of each time the trigger's pulled, or each time a firing is. So you wind up with a video, or a movie, I should say, of the tracers going out. So He knew I knew how to operate those since I was trained in the Marine Corps as a pilot and all those things. So I checked out the film. I went over to the building next to the mission control, set it up for him, and here we are. We're looking at the pictures on the blow up on the screen and on the back side of the moon, and we're approaching crater Tsiolkovsky. Now, for people that don't know, the Russians got to the moon first before we did, and as their satellites went around, they took pictures on the backside of the moon, and they gave names to all the good-sized craters on the backside of the moon after their Russian scientists. Go ahead.
Who landed on the moon first, though?
We did.
So the Yanks take credit for that?
Now, here we have to look at that from what we have discovered now. I'd say yes, we still landed on the moon. Or you can go back and talk about whether the Anunnaki were there first, et cetera. Okay. So I've got to be a little careful about what the question is. We landed on the moon. I know that the Russians tried, and they did have a crash, and they lost 2 of the cosmonauts. Okay, and I have a friend, Boris Yaroslavtsev. Then we looked at pictures that the Russians had of the crew and the other cosmonauts, and then another picture of the crew where the cosmonauts have been airbrushed out that died. So their trick is if they die, they're handicapped, not a something to brag on. So that takes care of that one. Now, back to who else is on the moon, and I talked about that. I was pretty sure that when we were looking at Tsiolkovsky crater, because I tell everyone, take your hand, turn it palm up, bring your fingers all together, and look at the domes on the top. That's basically the way those 5 domes were arranged, but they blended in somewhat with the rim of the crater Tsiolkovsky. Now, on the front side of the moon, on the terminator edge, you find there's about, I need to know exactly, about 20 some odd domes, all laid out, perfectly arranged, perfectly spaced, etc. And it wasn't until I was with a person by the name of Brat Shepard, who was going to help me write my autobiography, and I was showing him some of the pictures, and I was explaining how when the Apollo 14 spacecraft came up from the lunar surface and rendezvoused with the command module, we do what called a little bit of a dance, that we go all around and look at each other and be sure that we haven't damaged any of the equipment before we can rendezvous, we can dock. Okay, so when I'm explaining all this, he says, he's an artist. Artists use a different part of their brain to see things than what us engineers do. He says, look what's on the lunar surface. And I go, but we're talking about the command module. He said, no, look at the lunar surface. And right on the lunar surface is this base. It's very small, from 60 miles up. Yeah. And I'm looking at it, wow. So he zoomed in on it, got closer, and that's when we got the perfect looking picture of those bases. So that's just 2 of them. Since then, astronomers have come out and said, the moon is an anomaly in itself. It's too big to be going around a planet. It's the perfect size at its orbit. It can totally block out the sun. That's just 2 of the things. And the other one is for it to maintain the distance from the Earth, it doesn't weigh enough. So when we left the moon each time, first time on Apollo 11, one of the equipments that we put on the lunar surface called the ALSAP, the Apollo Lunar Surface Experiment Package, which included a seismometer, a seismic, to register any of the vibrations and or explosions and things, particularly when we rendezvoused with the command module, transferred all of the equipment from the lunar module to the upper stage to the command module. Then we remotely would separate the lunar module from the command module, fire its retro rockets so that it would then start decelerating and then going down and impact on the moon. When it hit the moon, the upper stage, the upper stage of the lunar module, when it hit the moon rang like a bell. I talked to a seismologist today. He said, oh, they get 10, 15 seconds, even that much, ringing whenever they set off an explosion to see what kind of strata we have here on the Earth. But when we're talking about the bell ring like a moon for several days, okay, that pretty much says it is hollow and has a lot of structures. Another way of telling is the first time the crew were coming around the moon, coming back in, we were expecting, for instance, them to come from the backside of the moon right over here at a certain moment. Instead, it was a little slow, a little later, and it came out over here. Well, there's what we call a mass concentration of metallic. So within the lunar surface, in that area that they came over, had to have been so densely packed with whatever was there that it caused the spacecraft to deviate from its orbit slightly. So a lot of things have happened to show that the moon is not empty, not
So what about these structures? What are they made of?
What are they made of?
Yeah. Is it the rock? Is it glass?
Okay, well, the rocks and things that we brought back from the moon, some of the scientists will tell you that the surface of the moon, if it is totally a man-made, for a better term, spacecraft of some sort, giant ball, the impact of asteroids and micrometeors and things all have created all this dust and thing on the surface and rocks. You're going to find the same elements on the samples on the moon. But one of the examples, for instance, helium-2 on the Earth is available but not very plentiful. Helium-3 is almost hard to find on the Earth. On the moon, helium-3 is an extremely plentiful. And so some of the samples that we're looking at may have the same minerals and things, but they're in different compounds, different compositions than what you'd find on the Earth.
So what's on the moon today? Have we got the US government on the moon today? Have we got bases actually operating from the moon? I suppose it ties into the secret space program.
Then you're going to have to go back before we actually went to the moon on Apollo. You're going to have to go all the way back to President Eisenhower when he made an agreement with, I believe, the tall grays is what some of the people have come forward and said. They're part of that. And they were offered only to, because the world, people, you have to understand what was going on. We just finished up World War II, and I jokingly say, the only way to maintain peace is to have the biggest hammer. Well, he was given a choice from the Nordic race of aliens or the tall grays. The grays were going to promise to give weaponry, etc. And the Nordics were saying, no, we won't give you any advanced technology unless it's for peaceful purposes. Okay, so
was any of these conversations happening in NASA?
Excuse me?
Was any of these conversations happening in NASA?
NASA didn't exist when Eisenhower was president. That came along.
While you was working there, though, was these kind of common gossip?
I wasn't invited. I was close to it when I was with Dr. Thornton Page and then worked with those. But then the very next day, I checked out the same reel of film that I showed to him and the other 6 scientists. And then I even told my brothers, Dr. A.R. Johnston, which was worked directly for the government and was an employee of NASA. I was an employee of the Grumman Aerospace Corporation. Yeah. So I told my brothers, come over to the main cafeteria at the Johnston Space Center, to the auditorium next door, and I'm going to be showing the same film of the backside of the moon. I didn't tell them what they were going to see. It was because I was so excited about it. Yeah. So the next day I checked out the same reel, took it in and set it all up, and I'm showing it, and we're tracking along the backside of the moon, approaching Tsiolkovsky Crater. We get to Tsiolkovsky Crater, we go over the top of, looking down in the shadow, and there's nothing there. I stopped the film, told the audience. Now these were the regular NASA employees and contractors and janitors, you name it, just the rank and file people. And they were excited as all get out. They're seeing the backside of the moon coming from one of the spacecraft going around it. So they were happy as they could be. But I stopped the camera and told them I'm having technical difficulties, just a moment. And I took the film out and I checked, and there was no splicing that I could find. In 24 hours, they had to have taken the 60mm film, taken out the area, enlarged it, painted out what they wanted to paint out, and paint over it, put it back in and recopy it and make a copy. So I put it back in, I finished showing it, everybody was happy. I was depressed. I took the reel back to the photo lab and was checking it in, and 2 things happened. The photo lab had the first room you go into is where just anybody would go in and request a copy of a photograph. Are we still good? Yeah. And they would get it in front. The middle room was where scientists, people could request looking at some of the pictures and films and the negatives and the positive transparencies over the top of what we call light tables. And then the third one was the environmentally controlled room to maintain the integrity of all the negatives and film and stuff. So I'm coming in to go and put it up, and I go into the middle section, and there's a big light table, basically 2 by 4 feet in diameter, and there's 3 people there, two men and 1 young lady, and I could see them. They're over and they're very carefully painting things out on these pictures. Well, And so being in charge of the data and photo control department at the Lunar Receiving Laboratory, my attitude was, what are you guys doing? Because, we want the integrity. And one of the guys, he quipped real quick. Oh, he says, we're professional strippers. And the gal just says, well, yes, we are. We're stripping. We call that, we're painting out the things that are on the horizon, things that would be confusing to people, et cetera, and stuff. And so I'm flabbergasted. But I have to get back, so I go ahead and put it in the third chamber back into, and then I'm leaving the photo lab, headed back to the LRL, Lunar Receiving Laboratory, and I run into Dr. Thornton Page. Now, Dr. Page had lost the right eye in an accident or something, and he wore a patch down over his right eye. And I jokingly, because he looked like a pirate, right? Anyway, I said, Dr. Page, what happened to those domes on the back side of the moon in Tsiolkovsky? He's got his patch. He looks at me and says, there was never anything there. Now, when I was showing it to him, and we were looking at those, and he had me zoom in close with the camera and back up and go frame by frame or several frames at a time, he said, stop. And he turned to the other 6 guys and said, well, boys, what do you think of that? And they all had a big laugh about it, which meant they knew what to expect. He knew which camera it was and which reel it was. But now, I didn't have time to go back and do much research, because about every 2 to 3 years, contracts were over, we get laid off and have to go someplace else. Yeah. Next thing you know, I find myself working for ILC, the company that builds the spacesuits and things. As I became one of their head engineers and testers in spacesuits.
What about spacecraft? Did you see alien crafts as well within these images, or is it just purely structures?
Oh yes. And in my book, Ken's Moon, it's an autobiography, but the back half gets into a lot of the pictures and things that have anomalies in them, spacecraft. I even have some copies of videos that shows when we were in orbit around the moon, tracking down below us, right past real fast. And then Apollo 15 has a great series showing the craft that came across. Buzz Aldrin talked about the craft that followed him up to the moon. What was his name? Wasn't Buzz? He died just not too terribly. The trouble I have is so many of the astronauts that were there when I was have passed on, yeah. and it's tough. Do
you think the new astronauts, like I'm British, Tim
Yes.
Peake, for example, one of our astronauts recently been up there.
Yep.
Do you think he's seen things?
Could he see anything? Well, we have stayed inside Earth orbit ever since Apollo 17 returned.
Why is that?
Okay. When Apollo 17 was returning, and some of the ham radio operators were tuned into the frequencies of everything going on, and lo and behold, the voice came out, and this was tracked by several, that said, do not return, you're not ready. Okay.
Do we mean not ready or not welcome? What do you reckon?
Kind of both, but then it depends on how you interpret it. We now know that we, after Eisenhower and the technology that they got, that we did, and then Trudeau, I think it was Trudeau, they've got together the fact that we needed to have a base on the moon. And so now we have evidence that there are bases on the moon, and the kind that we would have built versus the kind that the aliens have built on the moon.
So do you think the governments are working with extraterrestrial?
I'm sorry?
Do you think the governments are working with extraterrestrials then? Is that no doubt in your mind there's an agreement in place between man and ET?
There's no doubt in my mind. And particularly having to do with the extraterrestrials, and because and you've got this big secret going on with the Antarctica right now.
Yeah.
So the truth is out there. I'm considering this is the year of full disclosure. We're right at the middle of it, and before I'm coming out and saying I'll have to do something, but I expect by the end of November that it's all going to come forward. And all the truth will be out there, and the whole world will be able to. It's going to be tough for people, because the hardest hit organizations on the earth, the humans, are going to have to deal with. Well, it's not going to be religions after all. It's going to be the scientists that think that they are right on the cutting edge and know more than anybody else. Find out that we're thousands of years behind.
Do you think we're ready? Is humanity ready to know the truth?
Yes, and I somewhat agree. Because Orson Welles did that movie series on yes, I'm having a little blackout right now. Do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah, War of the Worlds. Yeah. War of the Worlds. When the aliens came to the Earth, and some of them panicked, and this was all a fake. But then when he did it on the radio, there were people that jumped off houses, committed suicide, and panicked. They thought we were being taken over by aliens that were going to destroy us.
Yeah.
Okay, we have matured a lot since then. Now, I don't say that humans are very untrustworthy, but by and large, as a species, we are ready to make that transition into part of the Galactic Federation of Intelligent Sentient Beings. It's time.
How is it going to happen? Is it going to be Trump? Is President Trump going to stand?
He is pushing for it.
Is he now?
Absolutely.
Was Hillary Clinton pushing for it as well before him, do you think?
Never happened.
Right, okay.
I'd hate to get into politics, but no. And no, let's don't go there because they.
But you see Trump being the
yes,
one to disclose?
in fact, I know he's already made some movements that way, and had some of our people go and give briefings to him.
Okay.
So that may be coming up here in a couple of months or so, hearing more information. So let's hope it keeps moving. I look at it this way: they tried to make contact with the governments, but the governments wanted to maintain control and all the power and all this. But based upon, and a lot of the science fiction stories and things come from good information, such as you don't interfere with the evolution of societies of an organization, the planet or something. But yet, so the government's people wanted to keep it silent and quiet. Now we've reached a point now, even though Brookings Institute said don't tell the world, this is back in 1920, I've forgotten exactly when, or 1940 something, that most likely we would discover evidence of intelligence either on Mars, the Earth, or the Moon, and if we did, we should not make it public because the public could not handle it. Now we've reached the point where you ask anybody on the street, well, do you think that aliens exist? Oh, sure. 99% of the people can handle it. You're going to have those that are going to fight against breathing, I guess, just because that's what they've got to do.
What's it like living with what you've seen, Ken? It must be quite hard
to all of the
to
information
digest that you've got in your mind, because some people don't believe you. You've probably lost lots of friends.
Yes, well, yes and no. Years ago, because the United States, Canada, and Great Britain did everything in the world to try to keep it all private and quiet, and wouldn't release, UFOs every night. Now they're starting to come forward. Although South America and Europe and places, they had given about 90% of all the pictures and evidence of landings of spacecraft and or videos taken from craft to craft viewing. And I worked at Vandenberg Air Force Base on the MX missile system for the Boeing company, and sure enough, one of the ones that we launched, and I got to view the pictures on as it's going up in orbit. This craft came in and was going along with it, fired a beam at the top, rotated over the other side, fired the beam on the other side, moved off, and it went into tumbling and exploded. So they've done their best, the extras have done their best to keep us from blowing ourselves up and keep us from getting into a nuclear war. Because if we mess up the Earth, it's going to mess up the whole solar system's attraction and magnetic and orbits and the whole bit. So people say, oh, well, they're going to come and destroy. They could have done that thousands of years ago, And then you're going to get into evolution. And if you look at how long it would take monkeys to turn, by the way, the monkeys and the gorillas are still here that Darwin said that we came from. Yet now, when you get into the ancient Sumerian writings and things like that, you realize that we are actually aliens because our DNA was tweaked with and messed with to make us more compatible to this planet and more intelligent to where we could feed ourselves or whatever. So we've made a lot of progress. We're at the point now where, full disclosure, it can happen really fast. Now it's going to be hard, be tough, because I'm kind of tired of running out of gasoline. I'd much rather have an anti-grav craft.
It's been a very exciting transition for me to go from having been more of a UFO investigator on the periphery, where I'm looking at the data that most investigators would try to find, the hard data, to increasingly being involved with insiders, where I'm getting information actually from the front lines of this battle that a lot of people don't even realize, which is a battle to release the truth about the UFO phenomenon. I think where most people stumble is they don't realize what these 30,000 sealed indictments are actually about. We can document now that from sources like pacer.gov, the typical yearly amount of sealed indictments in America is 1,000, and now we're up to 30,000. We've seen so far 3 of those indictments get unsealed. So this is still only 3 out of 30,000, but already the Anthony Weiner laptop, supposedly, according to the FBI and the New York City Police Department, had a file on it called life insurance that had incredibly damaging information about this deep state and various people working for it. Stuff that when it comes out will be extremely disturbing, extremely shocking. These are the people who are keeping UFOs a secret. And the embarrassing thing is how much there is to know that most people are not aware of. When you really understand the scope and the depth of the UFO cover-up, this is vastly beyond the idea of grays from Zeta Reticuli that crashed in Roswell. That is ancient history. We're now dealing with insiders who are very credible, who are being threatened with their lives for coming forward in very aggressive ways. My colleague Emery Smith had his dog killed by what clearly appears to be some kind of deep state operation. And we've had William Tompkins get killed under very suspicious circumstances. My insider Pete Peterson recently had his entire femur break when he fell, and now he's confined to the nursing home. He's never going to get out. So this is a very serious battle, and what these guys are telling us is that ever since World War II, if not before, that there has been a huge push into space, starting with the Germans. They got a head start by about 10 years, and then the Americans in the 1950s came in. And we have developed bases on the moon, bases on Mars. This is why we never went back. The Apollo missions end around 1971, thereabouts. Oh, we lose interest. But then you hear about something like Clementine, which is a spy satellite that circles the moon. Why would we need a spy satellite if there's nothing to see? So it's a very difficult concept for most people to really wrap their heads around how much information is being kept hidden from us, how much there is that we don't know. But it's truly vast.
We're at Contact in the Desert. It's the world's largest UFO conference, but it's not just an American thing. Obviously, I'm British. Why does it always have to be about America with ufology, the push for disclosure? We don't talk about the British Prime Minister coming forward to disclosure. Why is it Trump or it's Clinton? Why is it an American topic? Why do you think that is?
Sure. Well, I would say that a lot of the original intrigue in the UFO community came from America thanks to things like the Battle of Los Angeles, where clear UFOs overflew the US in Los Angeles and were shot at. Then you have the Roswell crash in 1947. The Roswell crash is really one of the main pieces of data that we have. Of course, the UK had Rendlesham Forest, but it doesn't have the same level of intrigue that Roswell does, because Roswell is an actual piece of hardware that crashed here and got brought in. So I think historically a lot of the UFO research was done in America, and so a lot of the legendary scholars are Americans and they come out of that basis. But it is absolutely true that the British Ministry of Defense has declassified an enormous treasure trove of UFO documents. You guys have also been trying to get the truth out in your own ways and doing that. And also, the UK really hasn't gotten its fair shake with an investigation of crop circles. When you look at the crop circle phenomenon, this is something that in the 1600s, Dr. Robert Plot, one of the original Renaissance scientists, was actually documenting crop circle formations appearing on his land in Southampton, England. And so he had formations of squares and circles and squiggly lines and all this kind of stuff. And even before that, you had the story of the mowing devil in the beginning of the newspaper history, where this man said that there was a guy that was going to mow his crops, but he wanted too much money, and he said, "I'd rather have the devil mow my crops than you." And then that night he wakes up and sees bright light outside, and in the morning there's these 2 perfect rings. So he assumed that it was the devil because he'd threatened that the devil was going to mow his crops. Even before that, you have in France the Archbishop of Lyon passing a law preventing people from taking crops out of crop circles for pagan ceremonies. And this is in like 700 AD. So the crop circle formations, I think maybe because they don't usually happen in America and Americans are not therefore able to go see them. I've been to the UK, I've been in the crop circles. That hasn't really caught on in the American UFO community the way that these classic American stories have. So there could be some jingoism, some nationalism, some patriotism to this. I've looked into the crop circle phenomenon heavily, and one of the things I find really fascinating about it is that with all of these clues about sacred geometry, it led me to investigate why geometry would be flagged as so important. And that has in turn led to a scientific model that has come up with the secrets of geometry in the quantum realm, the secrets of geometry in DNA, the secrets of geometry in the foundation of the genetic code, proteins, geometry in the Earth's ley lines, which is another big thing in England. You have all these ancient stone monuments like Stonehenge and Avebury, and then you have much more recent stuff, including churches, abbeys, and cathedrals that are built on these lines. So the geometry extends through that as well. So I don't really know why the UK hasn't gotten its fair shake, but I guess depends on what country you're in as well. And in the UK, I'm sure there's plenty of people that are much more expert on that aspect of what's going on over there.
So do you think disclosure is going to come from America or Antarctica maybe, even at the minute, the way things are shaping up out there? But where do you see it actually coming from?
It's hard to tell if disclosure is going to come from a given country. I know that there have been threats for a long time from India. India was going to disclose. They had a website called India Daily that I quoted from at the end of my first book, Source Field Investigations. And they were really getting a lot of disclosure out through their mainstream media source website. The Russians have threatened to disclose multiple times. The Chinese have threatened to disclose multiple times. And it's kind of anybody's guess at this point how this is going to happen, where this is going to happen, when this is going to happen. It could be from the US, it could be from somewhere else, and there may be completely unexpected surprises that force the issue to happen.
Is it possible for us mere mortals, as mankind, to use our consciousness? If enough people are wishing for it to happen, could that trigger it and take it out of the hands of everybody? Because for me, in my experience in the last 3 years, which has led me to you today, it's been very much consciousness-led. So is that going to be a key role to it?
I do think that our collective consciousness, in some senses, determines when this is going to happen. And that is a very interesting scientific piece of data we can look at, where the deep state, the enemy in this global game, is very aware of the collective power of our consciousness. I like to point people towards what I call the meditation effect, where 7,000 people meditate together, and they've proven a 72% reduction. Let me say that again. I've looked at the meditation effect, where 7,000 people get together, and they've proven a 72% reduction in terrorism, war, and fatalities worldwide from these 7,000 people. And that suggests that our free will is not free, that we are actually part of a collective mind, and that when a small group of people think very positive thoughts, it disproportionately affects everybody else's free will behavior. You don't just suddenly pick up that gun and shoot somebody. Something makes you feel like not doing it. So in the same sense, the deep state folks, they are occultists. They do have secret societies where they practice black magic. This is something we know now for a fact. They use things like pedophilia, human sacrifice, very, very dark stuff. They are aware that our beliefs mold reality, that we are creating reality by our beliefs. So when enough people actually believe that something is really going on, and they get deep enough into it, they do their homework, then yes, I do believe that will authorize a much greater level of disclosure to then come forward.
Again, when I use a bit of my experience, I've gone from a typical English lad, a few pints of beer. That was 4 years ago, until you destroyed the illusion for me. My friends can't believe it, that I've gone quite spiritual. From looking at YouTube videos of UFOs, I seem to have gone down this crazy path. Kind of made me a better person, more consciously aware of my actions.
That's good.
What the hell's going on here? How can that happen from looking at little green men as it back was 4 years ago before I met your content? Why do you go down that path? Because I think most people do.
Sure.
end up in some kind of spiritual place, which, depression follows you down that route. I think I've had my moments of darkness in the last 3 or 4 years, not because of anything going on in my life, it's because of the contents that I'm beginning to learn. So why does that happen?
The UFO question does ultimately become a spiritual question. We have to go back and look at these ancient civilizations that were able to levitate gigantic blocks of stone, put them together like a jigsaw puzzle with perfect fits between the rocks. And that would be the work, in my view, of an extraterrestrial civilization that didn't need to bring any material with them. They just use the native rock of the planet they go to. If they have anti-gravity and levitation, it's not hard to work those stones. It's not hard to take a 100-ton block and lift it up. So with that in mind, when we see how every ancient religion, every ancient culture in our world is founded by these extraordinary humans that are like us but not like us. They have extremely amazing gifts. They can levitate, they can read minds, they can materialize objects out of thin air. The story of Jesus feeding 5,000 people from one loaf of bread and one fish, and he just multiplies it, turning water into wine, walking on water, raising Lazarus from the dead. These are amazing things, and they captivate people's attention. And then as we look at these mythologies, they're always talking about the gods came. The gods gave us this information. The gods came in silvery flying shields, right? As you go into the UFO subject in modern times, there are certain reports of contactees that come up again and again where the contactees are experiencing direct interaction with benevolent extraterrestrials, many of whom look human. This is where we get the Nordic idea from. And these extraterrestrials very consistently have a sort of ecumenical message. They have this very spiritual view, and they really do seem to want us to embrace the teaching of the major religions, which is to be more loving, to be more forgiving, to be more compassionate. So there's different levels that you can go through as a UFO researcher, and the surface levels would be things like landing traces, crash retrievals, wreckage, bodies, sightings. What did people see in the sky? How many people reported it? Was it caught on video? Was it caught on film? As you go deeper, then you get into your insiders that might have actually interacted with extraterrestrials, things like this. And that's where more and more as you go into it, these insiders are telling you the beings have a very positive orientation. There's a whole subsection of this data now where multiple insiders have reported UFOs appearing over nuclear missile installations and powering down the missiles. And not just doing this for the US and the UK, but literally for all of the different nuclear powers in the world. So consider that this question of, well, is this being done as a hostile act? Are they trying to kill us? No, they're trying to prevent us from killing ourselves. That's the big question. That's the big answer, too. So as you go deeper and deeper into this, there are certain spiritual sources that have come through in various ways, some of which in direct in-person contact, like with my colleague Corey Good, others through a trance process like the Law of One material. And this is where you start to get a very deep philosophical message. And I've specialized in that for a long time. As you dig into this spiritual message, you realize, wait a minute, what we're calling the deep state or the Kabbalah or the Illuminati, that is the fulfillment of ancient prophecies like in Hinduism, like in the Bible, where the Hindus describe it as Kali Yuga, this time of very dark energy on the planet. They describe these Maleka kings that are stealing from everyone, and that ultimately they will be defeated. And in the Bible, it talks about, in the book of Revelations, for example, this idea that the beast will dominate the earth. And at this conference, I had somebody come up to me and say, well, I'm so worried about when is the Antichrist coming, and is he going to deceive us? And I said, look, it's already happened. Don't get hung up on the idea that the Antichrist is one guy. That's just a metaphor in the Bible, but it's really talking about something that's already happened. We're seeing mass poverty, this crazy thing that's going on in your country with Brexit, that you're trying to get out of the euro. Yeah. And I mean, you guys don't actually have euros, you still have British pounds, which is cool. But nonetheless, it's dragging everybody down. Yeah. Spain is about to default, Italy is about to default, the euro is toast. And you guys were trying to get out of there while you still had a chance with Brexit, and they just keep trying to stop you. which is nuts. So yes, the more you get into this and you realize that the world is being run by psychopaths who are pedophiles, who actually do practice satanic rituals, and they are actually trying to kill so many more people than Hitler that it makes Hitler look like a Sunday school teacher. This starts to get really upsetting. You have dark nights of the soul. You wake up at night and you can't go back to sleep because your mind is racing. You watch a video, you get all amped up, then you can't relax. And you spend days and days trying to find your balance again. How do you feel like going to work? Now you feel like you're working for a system that's killing the planet. How do you tell your kids it's okay to go to school when schools are being shot up all the time? How do you tell your kids it's okay to go to sleep when there could be some kind of crazy invasion that happens, or a martial law, or an economic collapse, this kind of thing?
It's pretty shitty, isn't it?
It's an upsetting reality. It's not fun. You know, we're having to face really destructive elements in our society.
How does Mr. Joe Average deal with that? It's hard.
Well, it is hard. And, you know, the universe doesn't always give us a nice comforter so we can curl up in a fetal position and suck our thumb. Sometimes you got to get out there in the barren desert and you got to walk around without water and you got to try to find your oasis. And so at an event like Contact in the Desert, we formed an oasis. We have the largest event in the world, bringing people together so that you don't have to feel alone anymore. You don't have to feel like you're the only one that's talking about this, or some little discussion forum you have online, or a radio show that you might be listening to. We, through community, come together and find out that we're not so different. It's not a bunch of freaks. It's not a bunch of guys with pinwheels on their head and glitter on their face. Now, there's a couple of those guys.
There's a few. I think Jimmy Church did like that before.
Maybe Jimmy Church did that. I don't know, but if you look at this audience, they're normal.
Yeah.
These are normal people, and they're not laughing. They're not snickering. They're not ribbing each other, going, "Oh, look at this." You know, they're taking this very seriously. Yeah. They're intelligent professionals.
Too intelligent?
Well, they're
some very
intelligent enough to see through propaganda. Yeah. And that's one of the interesting things. Why did the U.S. government and other governments try to make cannabis illegal? Now, I used cannabis. I've been sober for 25 years, but I will tell you that it became intolerable for me to watch television because I'm looking at these commercials and I'm in various psychedelic levels of consciousness and I'm saying this is what's killing our planet. So I couldn't be comfortable supporting that system. By the time I went to college in 1991, I stopped watching television entirely. And then just a year or so later is when I found out that UFOs are being kept secret from us. And I started to dedicate myself to libraries and books. Even before the internet, I was devouring the library in 1993.
Do you retain information really easily? Because you're so intelligent. You know, I'm not kissing your ass there. You are super intelligent. Have you got a special trick or something?
I don't know. I guess when I did take an IQ test, it scaled up to like a 179, which is a very freakishly high IQ. It's usually in the realm of like Asperger's syndrome, where somebody has some kind of autism. Thankfully, I don't seem to have that. I might have a little mild amount of it, but really nothing serious. I think maybe the mild Asperger's that I have would just be this incredible persistence that I can have in researching. I can sit down and I can do research for 14 hours. And then I'll be like, you know, why is my mouth taste bad and why is it dark in the room and I haven't even realized I need to turn the lights on and I need to go to the bathroom and I need to drink water.
Does that prove that you're living your purpose then?
Yeah, I get into a flow. I get really, really focused. I can stay focused on something for a very, very long time and go much deeper into it than most people would. So I do also seem to have a fairly photographic memory. Now, there are definitely things I don't remember, but the more interested I am in something, the more likely it is that I will always remember it. And I bring up stories with my mother from when I was a child. My brother doesn't remember it, my mother doesn't remember it, but I remember it just like it happened yesterday. And so I'm not really sure why that is. It's just an interesting fact that I have these unique skills that I've applied, which probably, if you look at my family and my background, I come from where my grandfather was an engineer, My great-grandfather came over to America from Great Britain to build the New York City subway system. He had a PhD in engineering and a JD in law. And so he worked with the bankers to help the New York City subway get constructed. It's possible that he was involved in this to some degree and he broke away. I don't know. If that is true, it's a family secret. I never got any access to it. But it is interesting that Wilcock is an English aristocratic family. And it's not Wilcox, it's Wilcock. And so that's this weird background that I have where we trace back to the nobility. So I don't know what it is. I'm not sure about what the answers are here. All I can tell you is that my family accomplished some pretty amazing stuff. My grandfather's mother on my father's side was one of the first college professors in America. So my grandfather graduated from Harvard when he was 15 years old at the top of the class, or went into Harvard when he was 15 years old and graduated at the top of the class. So they accomplished things in engineering, and I seem to have pushed into this weird subject, but I feel like I have been able to bring a level of scholarship, academic credibility to it that most people have not had, and then also being able to keep secrets, which is very important to gain the trust of insiders. I have not betrayed people. I've kept my confidences, and that's how I've gained access to so many different people who've told me really amazing things.
So what's your end game here? Because now you're newly married. I'm pretty damn sure the lovely wife's not going to let you have 16 hours in your bedroom doing research now, but so
sure.
What's your end game? What's your pension plan? You know, where are you heading over the next 5 years?
I did go through more than one very, very traumatic relationship.
We've all had them, I think.
Yes, and some of these relationships, without getting too specific, I haven't really talked about this publicly too much, but I was dealing with some very severe abuse. And this did not include, most of the time, did not include being physically hit, but it was a lot of screaming, a lot of drama, a lot of violence that I saw visibly. And I don't really know why that happened, but it was very difficult to get out of it once you get into it. And the situations that I went through actually smashed out of me the workaholic. I could not be in an environment of working 14 hours a day with this kind of stuff going on. And the various people who were doing this, you know, the women I was involved with, they did have a point, which was that I was driving myself sick. I would get sick about every 2 months for like 2 weeks. I'd be deathly ill. And I wasn't getting good exercise. I wasn't taking care of my health. I had very dark circles under my eyes, very pale skin, lots of acne. And so it did seem at a certain point that this binge of information that I've been on for 20 years had to slow down. I had to kind of learn how to control myself. And being traumatically abused is a great way to kind of smash you out of a pattern. And so by the time I got together with my wife, Beth, I had been out of those cycles, and I had learned how to live a more relaxing life. I'd learned how to spend some time playing music, spend some time walking in nature, not just always being crazy. So now I feel like I've found a way to be more balanced. And a lot of the research that I did in my what I call genius phase, when I was doing 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, year after year after year, I still draw heavily off of that research, but I'm also still updating it. I'm still doing many hours of research a day. It's just not something that consumes my entire life anymore like it did before.
Okay, we'll wrap this up because I know you work really hard and I don't want to take up too much of your time, but if you could look into the camera lens
Sure.
and speak to all the beautiful souls that will be watching this, what can we expect in the next 12 months and how can each individual deal with what's going to happen?
Sure,
So we can personally help each individual now maybe.
All right. So what's going to happen in the next 12 months for me is very provocative. We're looking at these 30,000 sealed indictments that have been come clear out in the pacer.gov American documentation. This includes apparently many of the top level people in the deep state. So with those arrests, it's probably going to be some kind of catalyzing event that leads to that happening. And what it looks like it's going to be now is another 2008 style economic collapse. It's probably going to be really scary for a while. There's going to be a lot of fear. The euro will most likely collapse. The dollar will most likely collapse. And people have been asking me, what should I do? If it hasn't happened yet and you have stocks, it may be a good idea to sell them, but I'm not giving you financial advice. If you still have stocks and the crash is taking place, don't panic sell. Because what we're hearing is that the alliance is going to reboot the economy. And the alliance, of course, being a majority of the U.S. military and intelligence establishment, as well as many, many different foreign countries and their governments as well. We're going to be back on a gold standard. We're going to be back on a protected currency that can't be manipulated with financial gerrymandering and all these crazy games they've been playing. Instead, what we're going to see is the economic event which probably leads to the unsealing of the indictments, because now people are really mad and they want justice. And then all these criminal prosecutions start to happen, and it's going to be bigger than the Nuremberg trials, bigger than the South African Truth and Reconciliation Committee, the biggest criminal proceedings we've ever seen in world history. And with that, things are going to start to unravel very quickly. I have heard possibility, and I don't know how this is going to go down, but the possibility that, for example, we're going to hear about pyramids under the oceans around the world, like off the coast of Cuba, like off the coast of Portugal. And there's stuff in Antarctica that we might hear about. There's various things, there's technologies in some of these ancient ruins that they might come out with. And why would they do this? Because they want to throw off the mass arrests. They want to try to delay this, make us feel like, well, maybe these guys aren't so bad. Maybe we need to give them another chance because they were holding on to a lot of cool stuff, but now they want to tell us the truth. Well, the answer is we know that this is what they're planning, but they are trying to withhold the full information. It's very likely that insiders from the alliance are going to leak videos of massive underground facilities, show us some things we never would have imagined, decloak flying black triangle craft that we're not supposed to have, tell us about orbital space platforms that we're not supposed to have. And all of this is going to be part of this sort of avalanche of disclosure, where it just starts coming out almost faster than we can process. Just like what happened with the Snowden documents, where you see so many things happening all at once. It's going to be like that again. I don't know exactly when this is going to be, but the QAnon briefings that were showing up on 4chan from October 27th to May 22nd, 2018, October 27th from the year before, 2017, those briefings include this idea that we're going to see mass prosecutions. And they hint at the idea of a UFO-related disclosure as well. So the briefings I've gotten personally do suggest that we are going to get this kind of overwhelming tidal wave of truth coming at us. And if you are aware of this in advance, you can help, because the key is to be a person who is proactive in helping others understand if an economic collapse is taking place, it's not the end of the world, the sky is not falling, this is part of the plan, it needs to happen. The economy will be rebooted, it will be much healthier, the greed and the corruption will be taken out, but we needed this to get people angry. And when the trials start to happen, when you see people on trial, being arrested, being charged with some very heinous crimes, remember that the good guys are winning. Remember that this has been documented for many years. I've been talking about it since at least 2009, and we've been expecting this. So the deep state is going to try to make you think these arrests are a government overthrow, that it's a coup, that it's this evil thing. But just pay attention to what is being revealed in the criminal trials, what these people have done. Anybody that's arresting them, that's a good thing. Anytime that justice is being served, that's a good thing. You may not agree with the alliance entirely or what they're doing, but we all can agree that less secrecy is better, and therefore the enemy of my enemy is my friend.